An alien took me to the exact moment humanity gained consciousness, and what I saw about Jesus wasn't what any church ever told me. What if I told you that the anxiety destroying your life right now was engineered into your DNA millions of years ago? That every panic attack, every sleepless night, every moment you felt broken was designed on purpose? I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about the hidden blueprint of human emotion that's been buried for millennia. An extraterrestrial being showed me the origin of our species and the terrifying truth about why we feel too much. He revealed what Jesus actually was, and it has nothing to do with sin or salvation. Once you see this, there's no going back to comfortable beliefs. This will free you from years of emotional chaos, but it might shatter everything you thought was sacred. If you're ready to face the truth that churches, scientists, and governments have kept hidden, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because what happened to Evan Marlowe in that Oregon forest will completely rewire how you see yourself, God, and the invisible forces shaping human consciousness. Now let me tell you how it all began. Evan Marlowe was 41 years old and completely lost. Not the kind of lost where you can't find your way home. The kind where home doesn't mean anything anymore. He walked alone through the dense Oregon forests, boots crunching on pine needles, breath forming small clouds in the late summer air of 2023. Environmental analyst, that's what his business card said. Like it mattered. Like monitoring tree density and soil erosion gave his life any real purpose. It didn't. The divorce happened 8 months ago. Signed papers in a beige office while a lawyer droned on about assets and divisions. His wife, ex-wife, didn't even look at him. Just signed her name and left. She took the furniture. He kept the emptiness. That's when the anxiety started. Not sad, not angry, just hollow, like someone scooped out everything inside him and left only the shell. The panic attacks came at 3 a.m. mostly. Heart racing, chest tight, mind spinning through every failure, every mistake, every moment he should have been better. He'd tried medication, tried therapy. Nothing worked because the problem wasn't chemical. The problem was he didn't believe in anything anymore. Growing up, he had faith, real faith. Youth group every Wednesday, church every Sunday. He prayed before meals and felt God listening. The world made sense back then. There was purpose, there was meaning. But somewhere between college and career and marriage and collapse, faith became doubt. Doubt became cynicism. And cynicism became this, walking through trees, wondering why he bothered waking up. He believed life was biology now. Repetitive, meaningless biology. Consciousness was neurons firing. Love was oxytocin. God was a story humans told themselves because the truth was too terrifying. We're accidents, chemical reactions that learn to think. And thinking just makes us aware of how pointless it all is. That's why he was here. 3 days into a solo camping trip in the Cascade Wilderness. No cell service, no people. Just him and the suffocating quiet of his own thoughts. The backpack on his shoulders felt light. Tent, sleeping bag, some freeze-dried meals he barely touched. His heart, though, heavy. So damn heavy. He tried walking to forget he was lost inside himself. Tried letting the forest distract him from the void. Sometimes it worked for a few minutes. Then the thoughts came back. Why am I like this? Why does everything feel like too much and not enough at the same time? The wind moved through the trees, and it sounded like his own emptiness echoing back at him. Bird calls were his only consolation. At least something out here was alive. Really alive. Not just going through motions. His career used to excite him. Protecting forests, monitoring ecosystems, he thought he was making a difference. Now he filed reports nobody read, attended meetings that accomplished nothing, watched budgets get slashed while politicians pretended to care about the environment. It was all performance, all hollow, just like him. The forest became the stage for questions he couldn't answer. Questions he'd stopped asking out loud because asking made him feel crazy. What's the point? Why are we here? Does anything actually matter? He'd asked his ex-wife once during one of their final fights. She looked at him like he was broken. Maybe he was. He carried the weight of believing in nothing, and somehow that was heavier than believing in something false. At least lies give you something to hold on to. An inexplicable feeling had followed him since morning, like something was watching, waiting. He'd chalked it up to isolation playing tricks on his mind, but the feeling persisted. That afternoon, the third day of his self-imposed exile, the sky turned strange. Not stormy, just different. The light took on a quality he couldn't name. Evan stopped walking. Something was about to happen. He could feel it in his bones, in the sudden stillness of the air, in the way his pulse quickened without reason. The forest held its breath, and Evan Marlowe, who believed in absolutely nothing, was about to discover he'd been wrong about everything. The trees seemed to lean in closer. The shadows deepened despite the afternoon sun. He looked up through the canopy, and for the first time in years felt something other than emptiness. He felt anticipation. Something was coming. Destiny, fate, cosmic accident, whatever you want to call it, was about to shatter every certainty he'd built from the ruins of his faith. And deep down, beneath all the cynicism and pain and carefully constructed walls, a small part of him whispered, finally. The forest went silent. Not quiet, silent. Evan stopped mid-step, one boot hovering above the ground. No birds, no insects, no wind-rustling leaves. Like someone reached into the world and hit mute. He'd been in forests his entire adult life, knew their rhythms, their sounds. This wasn't normal. This was wrong. He lifted his head slowly, scanning the trees. Nothing moved. Not a single branch swayed. Not a single leaf trembled. The hair on his arms stood up. Cold shot down his spine for no reason he could name. No visible threat. No sound. Just absence of sound, which somehow felt worse. He took 2 careful steps forward. The air changed. Thicker. Denser. Like walking through invisible water. Each breath required effort. The atmosphere pressed against his skin. The silence transformed the clearing into something else. Something sacred. Like stepping into a cathedral where even thoughts felt too loud. Evan's heart hammered against his ribs, but his fear felt distant, muted, like it was happening to someone else. Then the light came, liquid gold pouring down through the canopy. Not harsh sunlight, not beam from a flashlight, something else entirely. It moved like honey, like mercury, like living light that had weight and substance. The light descended slowly, deliberately, wrapping around tree trunks, sliding along branches, pooling on the forest floor. Evan stared up, mouth open, brain struggling to process what his eyes reported. The ground beneath his boots vibrated, gentle, rhythmic, like the forest itself had a heartbeat and he was standing on its chest. His body lifted, no yanking, no force, just rising, feet leaving earth with the gentle inevitability of a balloon released from a child's hand. He should have panicked, should have screamed, should have thrashed and fought, but he didn't. The strangeness of the moment swallowed fear whole, left only wonder, only curiosity, only this impossible now. 3 feet off the ground, 5, 10. The trees fell away below him, and still he rose through that liquid golden light. He felt a presence, not threatening, observing, aware, intelligent. Something was watching him with an attention so complete, so total, it felt like being seen for the first time in his life. Then the voice came, not through his ears, through his mind, thoughts that weren't his sliding into consciousness like they'd always been there. Calm, vast, ancient. You asked for truth. Now you will see it. The words were clear, perfect, like they were spoken in a language older than English, but translated perfectly in real time. Evan tried to respond. His mouth opened, but no sound came. His thoughts scattered. Questions formed and dissolved before he could finish them. Who are you? What is this? Am I dying? Am I insane? The presence didn't answer, didn't need to. The light intensified, wrapping him completely, warm but not hot, bright but not blinding. He felt himself moving, though he couldn't tell which direction. Up, forward, sideways through space that bent wrong. The forest disappeared. The clearing vanished. Reality folded in on itself like paper being crumpled. And when it unfolded again, everything was different. Evan Marlowe hung suspended in light, every cell in his body vibrating at a frequency he'd never experienced. The last coherent thought he had before the transformation began was simple. I asked the universe last night. I asked why I felt broken. I asked if anything was listening. Something had been listening, and now it was about to answer in ways that would dissolve every belief, every certainty, every comfortable lie he'd been telling himself about what was possible and what was real. The light pulsed once, twice, 3 times. Then Evan Marlowe, environmental analyst, divorced and faithless and drowning in anxiety, crossed a threshold that exists between what we know and what we've forgotten we know. The silence held him. The presence waited. And the truth he'd been begging for, screaming for in the emptiness of 3 a.m. panic attacks, was about to be delivered. Not gently, not carefully, but completely. The space shifted around him one final time. When his vision cleared, he was no longer in Oregon. He was somewhere else, somewhere impossible. And he was not alone. Evan's eyes opened. He was lying on his back in a clearing that shouldn't exist. The light here was wrong. Too soft, too alive. It didn't come from a sun or lamp. It came from everywhere at once, gentle and unwavering. He sat up slowly, head spinning, and saw it. The being stood 15 feet away, perfectly still, watching him. Tall, maybe 7 feet. Impossibly thin, but somehow proportioned correctly. Like someone took human anatomy and stretched it, refined it, made it something else. The skin was gray, smooth, almost metallic, catching the ambient light and reflecting it in subtle ways. Not cold though, not lifeless. Alive. Deeply, utterly alive. The eyes hit him hardest, completely black. No whites, no iris. Just vast darkness that somehow contained depth, intelligence, memory. Looking into those eyes felt like staring into an ocean at night. You knew something ancient moved beneath the surface. Evan's breath caught. His mind screamed this wasn't possible, wasn't real, couldn't be happening. But his body knew better. Something hit him in the chest, not physical, emotional. A wave of calm that didn't belong to him sliding into his nervous system. The being was projecting feelings directly into him. Tranquility, understanding, patience, like being wrapped in invisible arms and told without words, "You're safe. I see you. You're understood." Evan felt tears burn his eyes. When was the last time he felt understood? Seen? Actually, genuinely recognized? The visitor moved closer, each step deliberate, careful, like approaching a frightened animal. No mouth moved, but communication filled Evan's mind. Not words exactly, concepts that became words, meaning that bypassed language entirely and translated itself in real time. "My name, in your understanding, is Ra'el." The voice was calm, gender neutral, ancient and young simultaneously. Evan tried to speak. His throat worked, but nothing came out. "Don't try to talk," Ra'el continued. "Your vocal cords aren't designed for this exchange. Think your response. I'll understand." "What are you?" Evan thought desperately. "A visitor, an observer, a friend, if you'll allow it." "Why me?" "Because you asked. Last night, standing under stars, you asked the universe why you felt broken, why nothing made sense. I heard that." Evan's chest tightened. He had. Drunk on whiskey and desperation, he'd whispered those exact words into the darkness. "I didn't come to harm you," Ra'el said gently. "I came to answer your request. You wanted truth. I'm here to provide it." The air around them seemed to breathe, to pulse, like the space itself was alive and listening. Behind Ra'el, something appeared. A membrane of golden light materialized out of nothing, translucent, shimmering. It hung suspended in the air, pulsing rhythmically like a living thing. Not projected, not technological, organic, conscious. The membrane moved with intention, expanding and contracting, responding to Ra'el's presence. Evan stared at it, transfixed. Then he noticed his wrist. A symbol glowed there, geometric, intricate, lines and circles forming a pattern that hurt to look at directly, not from pain, but from complexity his brain couldn't quite process. The mark burned without burning, present without having been placed. He looked at Ra'el, confusion radiating from every cell. "The mark indicates resonance," the being explained. "Your consciousness has been attuned, temporarily elevated to receive what I'm about to show you." "What are you going to show me?" Those black eyes seemed to deepen. "Everything. The origin of your species, the truth about your emotions, why you feel broken when you're actually operating exactly as designed." Evan's heart hammered. "And," Ra'el added softly, "the truth about the one you called Jesus, what he really was, why he came, what his message actually meant." The clearing spun. 30 years of church, 15 years of atheism, all of it trembling on the edge of irrelevance. "This will change you," Ra'el warned. "Once you see this, you cannot unsee it. Comfortable beliefs will shatter. The world you thought you knew will reveal itself as something far stranger and far more beautiful. I don't know if I'm ready. You asked for truth. Truth doesn't wait for readiness. It simply is. The membrane pulsed brighter, responding to their exchange. Ra-El extended one long, graceful hand toward it. Come, your education begins now. Evan stood on shaking legs. Every rational part of his brain screamed this was impossible. Hallucination, breakdown, psychotic episode brought on by isolation and untreated anxiety. But the symbol on his wrist glowed brighter. The calm in his chest deepened, and Ra-El's presence felt more real than anything he'd experienced in years. The being waited, patient and eternal. The membrane pulsed, ready to open, and Evan Marlowe, who believed in nothing, took his first step toward everything. Ra-El touched the golden membrane. It opened like a flower blooming in reverse, spiraling inward, creating an entrance that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. Follow, the being said simply. Evan stepped through. The sensation defied description. Not walking, not falling, transitioning through states of matter his body wasn't designed to perceive. Then he was inside. The corridor stretched endlessly in both directions. Walls made of light that moved like liquid, like living tissue, like consciousness given form. Not projection, not hologram. Actual light with substance, awareness, intention. Evan reached out, hand trembling. His fingers touched the wall and it responded, rippling outward from the point of contact, warm and welcoming. These are memory streams, Ra-El explained, walking beside him. Information encoded in temporal spatial matrices. What you're seeing is thought made visible. Images began appearing in the flowing walls. Worlds Evan had never imagined. Planets with purple skies and crystalline vegetation. Beings of pure energy dancing between stars. Civilizations that rose and fell in cosmic heartbeats. Life, everywhere. In forms so alien his brain struggled to categorize them. We are trans-temporal architects, Ra-El said. We don't just travel between stars, Evan. We move through time itself. Past, present, future, all accessible to those who understand the nature of consciousness. The corridor shifted. Now the images showed Earth, but not the Earth Evan knew. Ancient Earth, primal Earth, continents in wrong positions, oceans where deserts now existed, sky a different color. Your planet, 2 million years ago, Ra-El narrated. Evan watched evolution unfold in fast forward, simple organisms becoming complex, fish crawling onto land, reptiles diversifying, mammals emerging, then primates, then proto-humans. But something was different about the progression. It didn't look random, didn't look like blind chance and natural selection. It looked intentional, deliberate, like someone was guiding it. You're seeing correctly, Ra-El confirmed. Human evolution was not accident, it was engineering. The walls showed hands made of light touching DNA strands, adjusting, modifying, creating. Evan's stomach dropped. You made us? Not made, guided, influenced. There were already primates on your world with potential. We simply enhanced certain capabilities, accelerated certain developments. Why? Curiosity. The same reason your species explores space. The same reason you ask questions. We wondered what would happen if we combined high intelligence with extreme emotional sensitivity. The corridor focused on a single proto-human, male, crouched by a fire, maybe 50,000 years ago. He looked almost modern, almost human, but his eyes held something different, something animal, pure instinct and reaction. Then it happened. Golden light, the same color as the membrane, descended into the being's skull. Evan watched the exact moment consciousness ignited. The proto-human's eyes changed. Awareness flooded them. Self-awareness. The knowledge of I, me, self. The creature looked at his own hands like seeing them for the first time. Wonder crossed his face. Then confusion. Then something that made Evan's breath catch. Fear. Raw, primal terror at the realization of existence. At being aware of being aware. At understanding mortality, vulnerability, isolation. That, Ra-El said quietly, was the birth of human consciousness, the moment your species became truly human, and simultaneously, the moment fear became hardwired into your biology. Evan felt it in his own chest, that ancient fear, The same fear that woke him at 3 a.m. in panic. The same fear that made him question everything. The same fear that convinced him he was broken. "You're not broken," Ra-El said, reading his thoughts. "You're operating exactly as designed. We made you sensitive, deeply, profoundly sensitive, able to feel more intensely than almost any species in this galaxy. Why would you do that? Because sensitivity is strength. It's what makes you capable of art, music, love, compassion. It's what drives you to explore, create, connect. But yes, it also makes you suffer. Intelligence plus deep emotion creates a being capable of tremendous beauty and tremendous pain." The corridor showed more. Early humans developing language, creating tools, building communities, but also killing each other, destroying, fearing, dividing. The experiment had unintended consequences, Ra-El admitted. Consciousness without proper guidance becomes dangerous. Intelligence without wisdom leads to self-destruction. The images showed civilizations rising and falling. Atlantis, Lemuria, names Evan half recognized from mythology. All real, all destroyed by the same pattern. Fear overcomes love. Division overcomes unity. Ego overcomes collective good. That's why emissaries have been sent throughout your history, Ra-El said. Beings tasked with teaching your species how to manage the gift curse of deep feeling. The corridor walls shifted one final time. A figure appeared, human form but radiating something else. Something vast compressed into flesh. Evan knew immediately who it was. Jesus stood in the flowing light, and every certainty Evan ever held about religion shattered like glass. The corridor replayed the moment in exquisite detail. Evan watched the proto-human's transformation frame by frame, and it destroyed him. Golden light entering the skull, synapses firing in new patterns, neural pathways forming that had never existed before. Then the eyes. God, the eyes. They changed from animal awareness to something infinitely more complex. Wonder flooded them first, pure, innocent wonder at perceiving himself as separate from the world. He saw his hands, flexed his fingers, recognized them as his. The concept of I crystallized. I exist. I am here. The wonder lasted maybe 3 seconds. Then came the terror. Raw existential dread crashing down like a wave. The proto-human's face contorted. He stumbled backward from the fire, eyes wide, breathing rapid. Because with self-awareness came the knowledge of vulnerability. I exist, which means I can stop existing. I am alone inside this body. No one else experiences what I experience. I will die. Everyone I love will die. Nothing lasts. The creature screamed, not from physical pain, from the unbearable weight of consciousness itself. Evan felt tears streaming down his face. "This is what we gave you," Ra-El said softly. "Blessing and burden in the same moment. The ability to know yourself, to question, to create, to love deeply." The being paused, those black eyes holding infinite compassion, and simultaneously the ability to fear, to doubt, to suffer in ways no other animal can, because only humans are aware enough to contemplate their own non-existence. Only humans carry the weight of knowing. "You made us sensitive on purpose," Evan thought, and it wasn't a question. Yes, by design. Extreme sensitivity is your defining characteristic as a species. You feel more than you need to survive, more than is evolutionarily advantageous. You feel because we engineered you to feel. Ra-El gestured, and the corridor showed more moments. A mother proto-human holding her dead child, grief etched into features too new to expression. An early human staring at stars, wondering why, wondering how, wondering if anyone was listening. A young girl creating the first painting on a cave wall, desperate to express something inside her that had no name yet. "Sensitivity is your strength," Ra-El continued. "It drives your art, your music, your capacity for love and compassion and connection. But it's also your weakness. It overwhelms you, makes you anxious, depressed, lost." Evan understood then, really understood. Fear didn't come from trauma or poor parenting or chemical imbalance, though those things amplified it. Fear came from the original design. From that first moment of self-awareness 50,000 years ago, his anxiety had roots older than civilization itself. The panic attacks that woke him at 3 a.m. weren't personal failures. They were echoes of that proto-human's first scream. ancient programming running through modern neurology. "You're not broken," Rael said, and the words hit Evan like physical force. "You're operating exactly as intended. Every crisis you've experienced, every moment you felt too much, that's the price of consciousness." The corridor shifted again. Now it showed Evan's own life. Age 7, crying alone in his room after his dog died, consumed by grief he couldn't articulate. Age 16, panic attack before a test, convinced his entire future would collapse if he failed. Age 23, falling in love so intensely it physically hurt, feeling like his chest might explode from the weight of emotion. Age 38, divorce papers signed, standing in an empty apartment, feeling like he'd been hollowed out. Age 41 last night, drunk under stars, whispering into darkness, "Why am I like this?" Every moment, Rael said, you were feeling what humans were designed to feel. Not malfunction, function. Deep, overwhelming, sometimes unbearable function. The truth broke Evan and rebuilt him simultaneously. All the shame he'd carried for being too sensitive, too emotional, too intense, too much. It wasn't weakness. It was exactly what he was supposed to be. The corridor's light pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. The walls responded to his emotion, brightening when he felt clarity, dimming when confusion crept back. Everything was connected. His pain wasn't separate from the first conscious human's pain. It was the same pain, transmitted through millennia of DNA, hardwired into the species. Humanity has always searched for purpose, Rael said, because consciousness demands meaning. Animals don't ask why they exist, they simply exist. But you need purpose, need to understand, need to believe your suffering serves something greater. Evan saw it clearly now. Every religion, every philosophy, every attempt humans made to explain their existence, all of it was trying to answer that first question asked by the first conscious being, why do I feel this much? And now you understand, Rael said. Evan nodded, unable to form thoughts coherent enough to transmit. He understood that his sensitivity wasn't curse, wasn't flaw, was feature. He understood that anxiety and wonder came from the same source, consciousness turned inward, examining itself. He understood that every human who ever felt too much, loved too deeply, hurt too badly, was carrying the original weight of awareness itself. The corridor hummed with recognition. Evan stood there shaking, tears drying on his face, feeling more seen than he'd felt in his entire life. Ready for the next part? Rael asked gently. Is there more? There's always more. Truth has layers, and what I'm about to show you will redefine everything you thought you knew about divinity, about Jesus, about why he came. The walls shifted, preparing for the next revelation, and Evan, still trembling from the weight of the first truth, nodded. Show me. Rael raised one hand. The corridor's light condensed, spiraled, reformed. A figure materialized 15 feet away. Human form, male, Middle Eastern features, simple robes, but the presence, God, the presence. Evan's knees buckled. It wasn't the appearance that overwhelmed him. It was what radiated from the figure, an energy so pure, so concentrated, so absolutely unconditional that Evan felt it like physical pressure against his chest. Love, not the word, the actual thing. Love as force, as frequency, as fundamental power of the universe made tangible. Jesus stood there, and Evan couldn't breathe. Not from fear, from recognition. Some part of him, buried under 30 years of church doctrine and 15 years of atheism, recognized this presence, had always known it, had been searching for it without knowing what he was searching for. This, Rael said quietly, is memory reconstruction from collective human consciousness. Not the man exactly as he was, but as close as temporal resonance allows. Jesus' eyes opened, brown, warm, containing depths that made Rael's black eyes look shallow by comparison. Those eyes held no judgment, no expectation, just absolute, total, devastating acceptance. Evan felt something crack inside his chest. He wasn't what your religions taught, Rael explained. Not God incarnate in the way they claim, not sacrifice for sin. The real story is simpler and far more profound. The corridor shifted, showing context. Jesus was an emissary from a higher order consciousness, a being who volunteered to incarnate into human form with full awareness of his origin. His mission was specific, Teach your species how to align emotion and intention. Evan watched Jesus as a child, playing, learning, growing, but even young, something different about him, an awareness, a clarity. The teachings weren't religious doctrine, Rael continued. They were operational instructions for consciousness, practical techniques disguised as parables so they could survive the translation across millennia. The scene shifted to Jesus' teaching, but Evan saw it differently now. Not preacher, not prophet, teacher, scientist, technician of consciousness. Love your enemies, not because it's morally correct, but because sustained hatred disrupts your own energetic field. Forgive 70 times 7, not for them, for you. To release the destructive frequency of resentment, Jesus spoke, and his words created visible ripples in the air around him, sound as vibration, intention as energy. The parables were vibrational maps, Rael explained, encoded information designed to activate dormant capabilities in human consciousness, seeds planted for future generations, when your species evolved enough to understand. Now Evan saw the healings. A woman, bent with illness, approached Jesus. He placed his hand on her shoulder, and Evan saw what really happened. Not miracle, energy transfer. Jesus' heart center, the area humans called the heart chakra, glowed golden, pure coherent emotional frequency, love in its most concentrated form. That energy flowed through his hand into the woman. Her energy field, dim, chaotic, diseased, responded, reorganized, harmonized. Her cells literally changed configuration. Inflammation decreased. Damaged tissue regenerated. She stood straighter. Pain left her face. Not supernatural, natural, just operating on principles humanity had forgotten. Love isn't sentiment, Rael said. It's the most powerful force in the universe. Coherent emotional energy that literally restructures matter. Jesus knew this, mastered it, came to teach it. The corridor showed more healings, each one the same principle. Concentrated love frequency reorganizing chaos into coherence. Your species lost this knowledge. Turned practical technique into religious mystery. Made Jesus into deity when he came specifically to show you that you're all capable of the same things. The scene shifted to the crucifixion. Evan braced himself. He'd seen crucifixes his entire childhood, knew this story. But watching it now, he saw something different. Jesus on the cross, in agony, bleeding, dying, and maintaining perfect love frequency the entire time. Not defeat, transcendence. Proving that consciousness could maintain coherence even through ultimate suffering. That love could persist through torture. That awareness could choose its state regardless of physical circumstance. He came to demonstrate, Rael said, that you are more than your biology, more than your pain, more than your fear. That consciousness properly aligned can transcend anything. The figure of Jesus turned, looking directly at Evan. Those eyes held everything. Compassion for every mistake Evan ever made. Understanding of every moment he felt broken. Recognition of the divine spark buried under layers of doubt and pain. You are loved, Jesus said, not telepathically but with actual voice. You have always been loved. You will always be loved. Not for what you do, for what you are. Evan collapsed. 30 years of church teaching him he was sinner. 15 years of atheism teaching him he was accident. Both wrong. He wasn't broken. Wasn't mistake. Wasn't cosmic accident waiting to be judged. He was consciousness temporarily wearing flesh. Inherently valuable. Eternally connected to source. Designed to feel deeply because feeling deeply was the point. The truth dissolved years of shame. Years of feeling not enough. Years of wondering if God existed, and if he did, why he'd abandoned Evan. God never left. Evan just forgot how to recognize love when it wasn't packaged in the forms he expected. The vision began fading. Jesus' form dissolved back into light, but the feeling remained. That absolute unconditional acceptance burned into Evan's chest like a brand. Rael stood beside him, patient and eternal. Now you know, the being said simply, and Evan, crying openly now, could only nod. He knew, finally, he knew. The corridor dissolved. Light folded back into itself, and suddenly Evan stood in a simple room. Spherical, smooth walls that glowed with soft ambient luminescence. Just him and Rael. Silence. Evan's breathing came hard and ragged. His chest heaved like he'd run a marathon. Sweat dampened his shirt despite the perfectly comfortable temperature. The truth sat on him like physical weight. Everything he'd seen, everything he'd learned, everything that shattered and reformed in the span of what felt like hours, but might have been minutes. He'd spent his entire life searching for answers outside himself. Church told him God was out there, up there, separate, distant, watching, judging. Science told him meaning was nowhere. Life was accident. Consciousness was chemical coincidence. Both looked outward. Both missed the point. You see it now, Ra-El said quietly. Evan nodded, unable to speak. His anxiety didn't come from chemical imbalance or bad luck or cosmic cruelty. It came from ignoring his own sensitivity, from treating his deepest gift like a flaw, from spending decades trying to be less than what he was designed to be. I want to show you something, Ra-El said. The being gestured, and holographic images appeared in the air between them. Evan's life, recent years, playing out like movies projected on invisible screens. He saw himself 3 years ago, still married, sitting across from his wife at dinner. She was talking about her day. Evan nodded but didn't listen. His mind elsewhere, always elsewhere. The scene shifted. 2 years ago, therapy session. The counselor asked, "What do you feel right now?" Evan's holographic self shrugged. "Nothing. I don't know. Tired." But watching from outside, Evan saw the truth. He'd been terrified, drowning in unprocessed emotion, but he'd learned to bury it so deep he couldn't access it even when directly asked. More scenes. The divorce papers signed. Evan's face blank, emotionless, but his energy field, visible now in ways it hadn't been then, churned with anguish, rage, grief, fear, moving into the empty apartment, unpacking boxes alone, sitting on the floor surrounded by his life in cardboard, feeling nothing because feeling was too dangerous. The first panic attack, 3 a.m., waking up unable to breathe, heart racing, convinced he was dying, and the voice in his head, "What's wrong with me? Why am I broken?" Each scene revealed accumulated pain, hidden fear, emotions stuffed down, denied, abandoned. Evan watched himself abandon himself over and over, saw how he'd learned to disconnect from his own heart, to survive a world that punished sensitivity. The divorce appeared differently now. Not his wife leaving him leaving himself first, becoming so disconnected from his own emotional truth that intimacy became impossible. She hadn't rejected him. She'd rejected the empty shell he'd become while his real self suffocated inside. "You didn't lose God," Ra-El said, and the words landed like stones in still water. Evan looked at the being through tears. "You moved away from your own inner light, disconnected from the source within you, tried to find externally what only exists internally." The holographic scenes faded. The room returned to simple emptiness. Evan felt shame and relief colliding in his chest. Shame at how thoroughly he'd abandoned himself. Relief at finally understanding why. "For years," Ra-El continued, "you've been searching for someone or something to tell you you're okay, to validate your existence, to give you permission to be what you are." The being's black eyes held infinite gentleness. But that permission doesn't come from outside. It never could. Churches can't give it. Relationships can't give it. Achievement can't give it. It comes from accepting yourself exactly as you are. Evan understood then. He'd been waiting for God to appear and fix him, waiting for love to complete him, waiting for success to prove him worthy. But he was already complete, already worthy, already connected to the divine source that created him. He'd just forgotten, or more accurately, he'd been taught to forget, taught that he wasn't enough, taught that he needed external salvation, and in believing that, he'd cut himself off from the only salvation that mattered, reconnecting with his own essence. "You were never alone," Ra-El said. Images appeared again, different now. Every moment Evan thought he was abandoned. There was light, faint, subtle, but present. The night his dog died and he cried alone. Light surrounded him, holding him in ways his child mind couldn't perceive. The divorce signing. Light tried to reach him through the numbness, whispering that this ending was also beginning. The panic attacks. Light pulsed in rhythm with his racing heart, trying to show him that fear was just unexpressed aliveness. Last night under the stars, when he whispered his desperate question into darkness, Light answered immediately, heard him completely, and arranged this entire encounter. "I've been with you always," came a voice, not Rael's. Something older, closer, more familiar. His own higher consciousness, the part of him that never disconnected, the divine spark that couldn't be extinguished no matter how thoroughly he tried to ignore it. The room transformed, not physically, energetically. It became sacred. The walls glowed warmer. The air hummed with presence. This wasn't spacecraft, wasn't alien environment. This was altar, inner temple, the holy space that exists within every conscious being. Rael smiled, not with mouth, but with entire presence. "Do you accept?" the being asked. "Accept what?" "The transformation, the remembering, the return to yourself." Evan stood there shaking. Accepting meant letting go of every excuse, every story about being broken or abandoned or not enough. Accepting meant taking responsibility for his own emotional state, his own connection to source, his own healing. Accepting meant becoming fully, terrifyingly, beautifully himself. "Yes," he whispered out loud, and his voice cracked on the single syllable. Rael's eyes brightened. "Then we begin the real work. Close your eyes," Rael instructed. Evan obeyed, darkness behind his eyelids. "Now feel what you desire, not what you fear, not what you think you should want, what you actually genuinely desire from the core of your being." Evan tried. Immediately his mind flooded with chaos. "I want to not be anxious. I want to stop feeling broken. I want the panic to stop. I want all avoidance, all defined by what he didn't want, rather than what he did." "You're still operating from fear," Rael said gently. "Try again. What do you desire?" Evan dug deeper. "I want peace, connection, purpose." The words felt hollow. Concepts he thought he should want rather than things he genuinely felt drawn toward. His mind raced, searching for the right answer. "There's no right answer," Rael said, reading his thoughts. "Just truth. What does your heart actually want?" Before Evan could spiral further, warmth bloomed in his chest. Not his warmth, Rael's. The being projected calm directly into Evan's heart center. Gentle, steady, unwavering. The mental chaos quieted. In the silence, something emerged. A feeling, pre-verbal, older than language. "I want to feel alive, really alive, not surviving, not managing, alive. I want to love something fully without fear of losing it. I want to believe my existence matters. I want to stop fighting myself." The truth of it hit like a wave. His chest grew warmer. The warmth spread from his sternum outward, pulsing with each heartbeat. "Good," Rael murmured. "Now visualize light in that space. Don't force it. Just allow it." Evan pictured golden light, the same color he'd seen in the corridor, forming in the center of his chest. It appeared immediately, soft at first, barely perceptible, then brighter, warmer. The anxiety that had been his constant companion for 8 months began to recede, not disappear, recede, like tide pulling back from shore. For the first time in years, Evan felt space in his chest, room to breathe, actual physical expansion where before there'd been only constriction. "Emotion shapes biology," Rael explained. "Your body isn't separate from your consciousness. It's an antenna, a receiver. It responds to your internal state and broadcasts that state outward." Evan kept his eyes closed, maintaining the visualization. The light grew stronger. When you operate from fear, which you've done for years, your body receives that signal. Cortisol floods your system. Heart rate elevates. Digestion shuts down. You're constantly triggering fight or flight for threats that don't exist. The warmth in Evan's chest pulsed rhythmically now. But when you operate from coherent emotional states, love, gratitude, peace, your biology shifts. Inflammation decreases, immune function improves, neural pathways reorganize. You're not broken. You've just been broadcasting the wrong frequency. Evan realized he'd been carrying internal storms constantly. Weather systems of worry, regret, fear, shame cycling endlessly through his consciousness and therefore his cells. No wonder he felt exhausted. No wonder anxiety consumed him. He'd been at war with himself at the molecular level. "This exercise," Rael continued, "transforms fear into presence, chaos into coherence. You're learning to consciously direct your own energetic state." The symbol on Evan's wrist began glowing brighter. He could see it through closed eyelids, geometric pattern pulsing in time with the light in his chest. The two frequencies synchronized, heart and symbol, internal and external, consciousness and form. Keep breathing, Rael guided. Let the light expand. Don't control it. Just allow. The golden glow spread from Evan's chest into his shoulders, arms, abdomen. Each area it touched released tension he didn't know he'd been holding. Jaw unclenched, shoulders dropped, stomach softened. His entire body had been braced against existence itself for so long he'd forgotten what relaxation felt like. This was it. Clarity opened in his mind like doors he'd never seen before. Suddenly he understood things without being told, knew truths without learning them. The anxiety wasn't enemy, it was messenger, signal that he'd abandoned his authentic self. Alarm system trying to get his attention. The divorce wasn't failure, it was course correction, release of a pattern that no longer served either of them. His sensitivity wasn't weakness, it was precise instrument, radar for truth, for connection, for what mattered. Yes, Rael said, you're beginning to see. Evan opened his eyes. The room looked different, brighter, more alive, like he'd been viewing reality through film and someone cleaned the lens. Rael stood there, black eyes reflecting Evan's own light back at him. This is only the beginning, the being said. Evan felt it. The transformation wasn't complete, wasn't close to complete, but something fundamental had shifted. He'd spent 41 years trying to fix himself from outside, trying to think his way out of feeling, trying to control his way to peace. Now he understood. The path was inward, always had been. Change didn't come from willpower, it came from alignment, from allowing his consciousness to remember what it actually was beneath all the conditioning. Can you teach me more? Evan asked. Rael's presence warmed with something like pride. That's why I'm here. Rael raised both hands. The room's walls became transparent, then disappeared entirely. Earth hung before them, beautiful, fragile, spinning slowly in the darkness of space. But Evan saw more than the physical planet now. He saw the invisible. Waves of emotion surrounded Earth like weather systems. Massive currents of feeling swirling across continents, colliding, merging, separating. Fear appeared as dark red clouds, dense, heavy, concentrated over cities, war zones, places where humans gathered in pain. Hope shimmered gold, thinner, more scattered, but persistent, flickering in pockets where people still believed change was possible. The two forces crashed together like storm fronts, lightning where they met, thunder that made the fabric of reality tremble. This is what your species broadcasts constantly, Rael explained. Collective emotional frequency. It shapes everything, weather patterns, geological activity, even probability itself. Evan watched the currents shift and flow. Some areas pulsed with coherent light, others churned with chaotic darkness. You're repeating the mistakes of ancient civilizations, Rael said, and his tone carried weight Evan hadn't heard before. Sadness, or something close to it. Images appeared within the Earth vision. Historical moments flickering past. Wars, genocides, empires rising on backs of slaves, technology advancing while wisdom stagnated. Division, always division. Race against race, nation against nation, religion against religion, rich against poor. The same pattern repeating across millennia with different costumes and languages but identical core. Humanity has forgotten, Rael continued. Forgotten that you're all connected. Forgotten your own sensitivity. Forgotten that separation is illusion. More images. Ancient civilizations that existed before recorded history. Advanced societies that understood consciousness technology. Cultures that lived in harmony with Earth's energetic field. All destroyed. Not by natural disaster, by collective emotional collapse. When fear dominates a species, Rael explained, coherence breaks down, the field destabilizes, and the civilization consumes itself from within. Evan watched Atlantis, real, not myth, tear itself apart. Watched Lemuria sink beneath waves, not from earthquake, but from sustained discord fracturing the very ground they stood on. Your modern world is emotionally sick, Rael said plainly. Look. The view zoomed closer to Earth's surface. Evan saw what he'd never noticed before, how individual anxiety fed collective anxiety, how one person's unprocessed trauma rippled outward, affecting dozens, hundreds, thousands. Depression wasn't just personal, It was contagious at the energetic level. Fear spread like virus, faster than any biological pathogen because it traveled through consciousness itself. Every person carrying unhealed wounds, Rael said, broadcasts that wounding into the field, and others absorb it, feel it, mirror it. The collective anxiety you see isn't random. It's accumulated individual pain multiplied exponentially. Evan felt the weight of it. 8 billion humans, most disconnected from themselves, most operating from fear, scarcity, separation, all broadcasting chaos into the shared field, creating feedback loops of suffering. But, Rael said, and the word carried hope, healing works the same way. When one person returns to coherence, when one heart remembers its own light, that frequency broadcasts outward too. Golden threads appeared in the vision, individuals glowing brighter, and around them, others beginning to glow too, resonance spreading like ripples in a pond. Healing yourself heals the field. Each balanced heart weakens the global chaos. Each person who remembers their connection makes it easier for others to remember. Evan understood then why Jesus came. Not to save individuals from sin, to teach collective emotional recalibration, to demonstrate that one coherent consciousness could shift the entire field around it. Love your enemy, because sustained hatred poisons the collective field. Forgive infinitely, because resentment spreads like disease. Be the light, because light is literally contagious at the consciousness level. The teachings weren't moral philosophy. They were operational instructions for species-wide healing. Rael showed more examples. Civilizations that came close to transcendence, societies that almost made the leap to sustainable coherence, all failed at the last moment. All fell back into fear. Ego overwhelmed unity. Individual gain trumped collective good. Short-term thinking destroyed long-term possibility. The pattern was consistent, predictable, tragic. You're approaching that same precipice now, Rael said quietly. Technology advancing faster than wisdom. Power concentrating while compassion diminishes. The same warning signs that preceded every collapse. Evan saw it clearly. Climate crisis, political polarization, wealth inequality, mental health epidemic. Not separate problems, symptoms of the same disease. Collective disconnection from source. Humanity forgetting what it is. Operating from fear instead of love. But you can change it, Rael said. Evan looked at the being, startled. Not alone, not through grand gesture, but through personal transformation that ripples outward. Every person who heals becomes beacon, lighthouse showing others the way home. The earth vision pulsed with potential. Dark areas could become light. Chaos could become coherence. If enough people remembered, if enough hearts reopened, if enough individuals chose love over fear. Your personal healing, Rael emphasized, has impact far beyond yourself. You think your anxiety only affects you, but it broadcasts. Others feel it, absorb it, mirror it. Evan felt the responsibility settle on his shoulders. Not burden, purpose. And when you heal, Rael continued, that broadcasts too. Your coherence strengthens the field, makes it easier for the next person, and the next. The vision showed interconnection clearly now. Every human linked energetically, invisible threads connecting hearts across distance. What happened in one affected all. Jesus tried to teach this. Love one another, not moral nicety, but practical necessity. You're all one organism. Hurting others hurts yourself. Healing yourself heals others. The message got lost, twisted into religion, dogma, separation, but the truth remained underneath, waiting, patient. Evan took a deep breath. His whole life he'd felt too much, cared too deeply, been overwhelmed by suffering he couldn't fix. Now he understood. He wasn't supposed to fix everything. He was supposed to heal himself, fully, completely, and in doing so, contribute his light to the collective field, add his coherence to the sum total of human consciousness, one heart at a time. That's how species transform. I understand, Evan said. Rael's presence warmed with approval. Then you're ready for the final piece. Why me? Evan asked. The question had been building since the moment he lifted off the forest floor. Out of 8 billion humans, why contact him? Why show him these things? Why transform his understanding of everything? He was nobody. Environmental analyst filing meaningless reports. Divorced, anxious, barely holding his life together. Why him? Rael gestured, and Evan's life appeared between them. Not scenes this time. A continuous line, birth to present, complete. Look, the being said. Evan watched himself being born, saw the moment consciousness entered his tiny body. The spark igniting. Even as infant, he'd been sensitive. Cried more than other babies. Felt more. Needed more comfort. Age 3, overwhelmed by his grandmother's funeral. Feeling everyone's grief like it was his own. Sobbing for days. Age 7, rescuing injured birds. Feeling their pain so intensely he couldn't eat until they healed. Age 12, writing poetry nobody understood. Trying to express feelings too big for his developing vocabulary. Age 16, falling in love so completely it terrified him. Feeling like his heart might explode from the intensity. Every major moment marked by depth of feeling, marked by sensitivity so acute it sometimes crippled him. This, Rael said, is your greatest gift and your greatest pain. Evan saw it clearly now. He'd always felt more than others, experienced emotions with rare intensity, been moved by things that didn't affect most people. Music made him cry. Sunsets stopped him in his tracks. Other people's pain hit him like physical blows. For years he thought he was weak, broken, too sensitive to survive. You're not weak, Rael said firmly. You're precisely calibrated, built to feel the world with depth most humans can't access. The lifeline showed how trauma dampened his gift. The divorce didn't just hurt. It convinced him feeling deeply was dangerous. Better to shut down. Better to go numb. Recent years showed his sensitivity suffocating under layers of protection. Like talent buried under fear. We seek out people like you, Rael explained. Those with heightened emotional sensitivity. Those who feel the connection between all things even when they can't articulate it. Why? Because sensitive people are bridges. Between physical and non-physical. Between individual and collective. Between human and divine. Rael showed Evan moments he'd forgotten. Age 9, sensing his mother's depression before she spoke of it. Knowing something was wrong just by being near her. Age 21, walking into a room and immediately feeling the emotional residue of an argument that happened hours before. Age 35, having dreams about colleagues' problems, then learning days later his dreams were accurate. He'd always dismissed these moments as coincidence, imagination, meaningless. Not meaningless, Rael said. Evidence. Your sensitivity isn't flaw. It's faculty. Perception beyond the 5 physical senses. Evan felt tears forming again. He'd spent his entire life apologizing for being too much, too emotional, too intense, too sensitive. Never occurred to him it might be gift, might be exactly what he was supposed to be. Your anxiety, Rael continued, isn't chemical imbalance. It's tremendous energy moving through channels you didn't understand, like lightning through wires not designed for that voltage. The being showed Evan's nervous system, lit up, overactive, constantly firing. You're not broken. You're a high-sensitivity instrument trying to function in low-sensitivity mode. Of course you felt overwhelmed. You were denying your own nature. The lifeline extended forward now, not showing what would happen, but showing potential, possibility. Evan saw himself teaching others, writing, speaking, helping people understand their own sensitivity. Saw himself becoming the bridge Rael described, translating consciousness technology into language regular people could understand. Your entire life has been preparation, Rael said. Every painful experience, every moment of feeling too much, every crisis that brought you to your knees. The silent clearing in the Oregon forest appeared. Last night when you asked the universe for truth, that wasn't random, that was culmination. Everything pointing to this moment. Evan saw it now. The path that led here. Each choice, each heartbreak, each moment of desperation. All necessary, all perfect. Even the divorce. Especially the divorce. It broke him open enough to ask the real questions, stripped away enough pretense that truth could actually reach him. You called for this, Rael said gently. Maybe not consciously, but your soul called. Your higher self arranged it. You were ready, even when you thought you were falling apart. The revelation brought tears and courage in equal measure. Evan had been preparing for this his entire life. Every book that mysteriously caught his attention, every teacher who appeared at perfect timing, every breakdown that preceded breakthrough. The universe had been answering his call long before he knew he was calling. "You have a role to play," Rael said. "Not grandiose, not special in the way ego wants, but important. You're meant to be bridge, to help others remember what you're now remembering." Evan felt the weight of it, the responsibility, the purpose he'd been desperately seeking. Not achievement, not success, not external validation, service, connection, being conduit for truth to flow through. "I accept," he said, and meant it completely. Rael's entire presence brightened. "Good, because humanity needs its bridges now more than ever, needs its sensitive ones to stop hiding and start shining." The lifeline dissolved. They stood in the simple room again, but everything was different. Evan was different. He wasn't victim of his sensitivity anymore. He was steward of it, and that changed everything. The room began to hum, low frequency, felt more than heard, like the entire structure was singing a note just below human hearing range. Evan looked around, suddenly aware this was ending. The golden membrane behind Rael started closing, slowly, spiraling inward the way it had spiraled open, petals of light folding back into themselves. Something in Evan's chest tightened. Not fear, something else. Sadness. The awareness that this impossible moment was temporary, that he'd have to return to normal life carrying extraordinary knowledge in an ordinary world. Rael stepped forward. The being's hand, long fingers, smooth gray skin, reached out and rested on Evan's shoulder. Warmth flooded through him immediately. Not physical heat. Energetic. Like pure compassion being transmitted directly into his cells. "You are not broken," Rael said, and the words settled into Evan's bones. "You never were. You only forgot what you are." Evan felt tears streaming down his face again. He'd cried more in the last few hours than the last few years combined. But these weren't tears of pain. Release, relief, recognition. "Remember this," Rael continued, black eyes holding his with infinite gentleness. "When doubt returns, and it will, remember this moment. Remember what you saw, what you felt, what you learned." The symbol on Evan's wrist pulsed brighter, golden geometric pattern burning with soft light, permanent now, etched into his skin like a tattoo but made of living energy. "This mark," Rael said, "is reminder, seal of remembering. When you look at it, you'll feel what you feel now. Connection, purpose, truth." Evan touched the symbol with his other hand. It vibrated under his fingertips, alive, responding to his touch. "I'll never see you again, will I?" Evan asked. Rael's presence shifted, something like a smile, though the face didn't change. "You'll see me always, not with physical eyes, but with inner knowing. I'm not separate from you, Evan. I'm reflection of the part of yourself you're learning to recognize." The being's hand left his shoulder, but the warmth remained. "Every time you choose love over fear, I'm there. Every time you trust your sensitivity instead of hiding it, I'm there. Every time you remember you're more than flesh and fear, I'm there." The membrane was almost closed now, just a sliver of golden light remaining. Outside, wherever outside was, Evan heard something impossible. Birds. The first sound from the normal world. Chirping, singing, life going on as if reality hadn't just been completely rewritten. The Oregon forest was coming back. Light began shifting around them, the room's walls growing transparent, trees visible through them like images developing on film. "One last thing," Rael said. Evan waited, desperate for every final word. "Choose love, in every moment, every decision, every interaction. Choose love." The words were simple, almost too simple, but Evan felt their weight, understood that choosing love when fear screamed louder was the hardest, most important work any human could do. Not romantic love, Rael clarified, not attachment or need. Coherent emotional frequency, the state Jesus demonstrated, the state that heals individuals and transforms fields. The light around them intensified, gold giving way to ordinary sunshine filtering through pine branches. Evan felt himself lowering, not falling, descending gently, returning. His boots touched forest floor, solid, real, pine needles and earth. Rael stood before him, already becoming translucent, fading like morning mist under rising sun. "Thank you," Evan whispered, inadequate words for what he felt. The being's form dissolved completely. but the presence remained. Just different now. Inside instead of outside. Part of Evan's own consciousness instead of separate visitor. The craft, if there was a craft, Evan never saw it clearly, departed. Not with sound, not with flash. Space folded, reality bent, and where something impossible had been, only ordinary forest remained. The light ascended, soft, graceful, like sunrise in reverse. Golden glow lifting through trees, dispersing into sky, becoming indistinguishable from ordinary daylight. Evan stood in the clearing, breathing hard. His chest expanded with something he hadn't felt in so long he almost didn't recognize it. Peace, not absence of feeling, presence of rightness, deep internal alignment that made everything else quiet down. The spiritual abandonment he'd carried for 15 years, the feeling that God had left him or never existed, vanished. Completely. He understood now. God hadn't gone anywhere. Evan had just stopped recognizing divine presence because he expected it to look like childhood Sunday school instead of his own consciousness remembering its source. The forest held sacred silence for one more breath. Then birds resumed their songs. Wind rustled leaves. Creek babbled somewhere in the distance. Normal sounds, normal world. But nothing was normal anymore. Evan looked at his wrist. The symbol still glowed, fainter now in daylight but definitely present. Permanent reminder that this happened. This was real. He stood there alone in the clearing. But not alone. Never alone again. Ra-El lived inside him now. Jesus' teachings made sense in ways they never had. The divine source he'd been searching for externally revealed itself as the very consciousness doing the searching. Evan Marlowe, 41 years old, divorced, anxious, lost, was found. Not by something outside fixing him. By remembering what he'd always been underneath the forgetting. The silence settled differently now. Not empty. Full. Sacred. Alive with presence that had always been there waiting for him to notice. He smiled through tears and began the walk back to camp, carrying truth that would change everything. 3 days passed before Evan returned to civilization. He stayed in the forest, processing, integrating, letting the truth settle into his bones. The symbol on his wrist pulsed regularly, sometimes bright, sometimes subtle, always present. He'd touch it during moments of doubt. Did that really happen? And feel the warmth return. The certainty, the knowing that went deeper than proof. The anxiety that had ruled his life for 8 months began losing power. Not gone. He still felt it sometimes. 3 a.m. restlessness, afternoon chest tightness, moments of panic without clear trigger. But now when it came, he breathed, intentionally, deeply, consciously. Pictured golden light in his chest the way Ra-El taught him. Felt it expand. Let the coherence dissolve the chaos. And it worked. Every single time it worked. The panic attacks diminished like fog under sun. Present one moment, gone the next. Unable to maintain themselves when met with conscious presence instead of resistance. By the time he packed up camp and drove home, something fundamental had shifted. He returned to work the following Monday. Same office, same desk. Same meaningless reports about tree density and soil composition. But he saw it differently now. The work wasn't meaningless. It was service. Small contribution to planetary health. Part of larger web of care. His co-workers looked different too. Not annoyances or obstacles. Other sensitive beings struggling with their own forgotten divinity. Playing their roles in the collective awakening. He started seeing the forest itself with new eyes. Trees weren't just organisms. They were conscious. Connected through underground networks. Communicating. Feeling. The entire ecosystem sang with intelligence he'd measured for years without actually perceiving. Every morning before getting out of bed, Evan began a new practice. Gratitude. Simple. Direct. Acknowledging what was rather than fixating on what wasn't. Thank you for this day. Thank you for this breath. Thank you for this chance to remember. The practice took 30 seconds. Changed everything. Faith returned. Not the childhood version where God was distant authority figure judging from heaven. Different faith. Experienced faith. Direct knowing that consciousness pervades everything. That love is fundamental force. That he'd never been disconnected from source even when he felt abandoned. He'd just forgotten how to recognize connection. Now he remembered. His ex-wife called one afternoon. Awkward at first. They hadn't spoken in months. "You sound different," she said. "I am different." he replied honestly. They talked for an hour, really talked, present with each other in ways they never managed during marriage. She was seeing someone new. He was genuinely happy for her. The bitterness he'd carried dissolved. He could see clearly now their relationship ended because both had forgotten themselves, tried to find completion externally, built life on shared emptiness instead of shared wholeness. The divorce wasn't failure. It was necessary ending that created space for new beginning. They hung up with mutual blessing. No lingering resentment. Just two people who once loved each other, now loving themselves enough to let go. Evan's relationships across the board transformed. He showed up differently, listened more deeply, spoke more truthfully, let people see him, really see him, vulnerability and all. His heart became compass, silent, knowing that guided decisions better than analysis ever could. Should he take this job? Heart felt heavy. No. Should he call this friend? Heart felt warm. Yes. Should he keep hiding his sensitivity? Heart screamed no. He began trusting inner guidance over external expectation, and life reorganized itself accordingly. The sensitivity he'd spent decades trying to suppress became his greatest asset. He felt when people were hurting beneath their smiles, sensed what wasn't being said, perceived energy shifts others missed. Instead of curse, it was gift. Radar for truth, bridge between seen and unseen. He carried piece of the revelation inside him now, not intellectually, experientially. Knew in his cells that consciousness shapes reality, that emotion is technology, that love literally heals. And when doubt crept in, because it still did sometimes, he'd touch the symbol on his wrist, feel Ra-El's presence, remember Jesus' teaching, reconnect with source that never left. The clearing in the Oregon forest became internal altar, place he could return to any time, sacred space where truth lived untouched by world's chaos. Ra-El and Jesus weren't external anymore. They lived inside him, aspects of his own awakened consciousness, reminders of what was possible when humans remembered what they were. 6 months after the encounter, Evan sat on his apartment balcony watching sunset. Sky painted gold and orange and deep purple, beauty so profound it hurt. The old him would have seen colors and felt nothing, maybe taken a photo. Scrolled past it tomorrow. The new him felt it completely, let it fill him, recognized it as prayer without words, divine intelligence expressing itself through light and atmosphere. And finally, Evan understood. God never abandoned him. He'd just forgotten how to feel his own light, forgotten that he was made of the same consciousness that creates sunsets and stars and songs, forgotten that sensitivity wasn't weakness but connection to everything sacred. He'd spent 41 years looking for God in churches and books and other people. Never occurred to him to look in the only place God actually lived, inside, where love waited patiently for him to remember, where truth had always been, where his own divine spark glowed eternal, forgotten but never extinguished. Evan smiled at the sunset, touched the symbol on his wrist, and whispered the only prayer that mattered. Thank you for bringing me home.